The rain poured down relentlessly over the streets of Chicago, turning the sidewalks into slippery mirrors that reflected the towering skyscrapers above. Marcus Johnson tightened the straps of his backpack and pulled his hood closer around his face. At 25 years old, he had spent most of his life navigating the challenges of this city, working odd jobs, taking care of his younger sister after their mom passed away, and trying to find a way to break free from the cycle of struggle. Today, like every other day, he was out delivering packages as a bike courier. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills. Marcus pedaled through the busy streets, weaving between cars and dodging pedestrians who were hurrying to escape the downpour. His destination was a high-rise office building located in the heart of the financial district. The address written on the label matched the name of a company he'd heard about before, Carter Tech, one of the biggest tech firms in the country. Their CEO, Daniel Carter, was often featured in news articles for being a self-made billionaire who revolutionized artificial intelligence. But all Marcus cared about right now was getting this package delivered on time so he could move on to his next job. As he approached the entrance of the sleek glass building, Marcus slowed down and came to a stop under the awning. He swung his leg over the bike frame and stepped off, shaking some of the water from his gloves. Just as he reached for the package tucked safely inside his bag, a figure rushed past him, nearly knocking him off balance. Startled, Marcus turned to see a young woman in a business suit struggling to keep hold of a stack of papers that had slipped out of her arms. "Oh no," she exclaimed, dropping to her knees as the papers scattered across the wet pavement. Without hesitation, Marcus knelt beside her and began picking up the soggy documents. "Here, let me help you," he said calmly, collecting as many sheets as he could before they got completely soaked. "Thank you," the woman replied breathlessly, her hands trembling as she tried to organize the mess. She had short blonde hair tied back neatly, and her face looked pale under the dim light of the building's entrance. Her clothes screamed professionalism, a tailored blazer, pencil skirt, and heels, but her expression told a different story. She looked overwhelmed, panicked even. "No problem," Marcus said, handing her the last few pages. "You okay? You seem kind of stressed." She sighed deeply, running a hand through her damp hair. "I'm fine. Well, not really. These are important documents, and if I don't get them upstairs soon, my boss is going to lose it." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That bad, huh?" "You have no idea," she muttered, glancing nervously at her watch. Then, realizing she hadn't introduced herself, she extended a hand toward him. "I'm Lisa, by the way. Lisa Monroe." "Marcus Johnson," he replied, shaking her hand firmly. Before either of them could say anything else, a deep voice called out from behind them. "Lisa, what's taking so long?" Both Marcus and Lisa turned to see a tall man striding toward them. He looked to be in his late 40s with salt and pepper hair and an air of authority that demanded attention. His sharp gray suit fit him perfectly, and his piercing blue eyes scanned the scene quickly. This, Marcus assumed, was none other than Daniel Carter himself, the man everyone in the tech world talked about. "Mr. Carter, I'm sorry," Lisa stammered, clutching the folder tightly against her chest. "I dropped the files, but this gentleman helped me pick them up." Daniel's gaze shifted to Marcus, who stood up straighter instinctively. There was something intimidating about the way Daniel carried himself, yet Marcus couldn't deny the curiosity sparking in those intense eyes. "You're the courier?" Daniel asked, his tone neutral but probing. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied confidently. "Just delivering a package for your office." Daniel nodded slowly, then glanced at the folder in Lisa's hands. "Are those the documents we need for the board meeting?" "Yes, but..." Lisa hesitated, biting her lip. "There's still more missing. Eric Dawson took the rest when he left the company." At the mention of Eric's name, Daniel's jaw tightened visibly. "We don't have time for this. The board meeting starts in less than 2 hours." Marcus listened silently, piecing together what little information he had gathered. Whoever this Eric guy was, he clearly wasn't on good terms with Daniel, and whatever those documents contained, they seemed critical enough to cause panic among two highly competent professionals. After a moment of tense silence, Daniel turned back to Marcus. "How well do you know this city?" Caught off guard by the question, Marcus blinked. Pretty well. I've been riding these streets for years. Daniel studied him for a moment longer, then made a decision. Good. We need someone who can navigate quickly and discreetly. Lisa will explain everything on the way. Come with us. Marcus frowned, unsure whether he should agree. Helping strangers retrieve stolen documents sounded risky, not to mention illegal. But something about Daniel's urgency struck a chord within him. Maybe it was the desperation in Lisa's voice or the challenge of doing something bigger than delivering packages. Whatever it was, Marcus found himself nodding. All right, he said finally. I'll help. Lisa looked relieved, while Daniel gave him a curt nod of approval. Together, the three of them hurried to a black sedan parked nearby. As Marcus climbed into the back seat, he couldn't shake the feeling that this simple delivery job was about to take a drastic turn. Little did he know, the events of the next few hours would change his life forever. The car sped through the rain-soaked streets, heading toward an unknown destination. Lisa explained the situation in hushed tones, detailing how Eric Dawson, a former engineer at Carter Tech, had stolen sensitive files containing groundbreaking AI technology. If those documents fell into the wrong hands, it could spell disaster for the company, and possibly the entire industry. Marcus listened intently, his mind racing with possibilities. He didn't fully understand the technical aspects of what Lisa described, but he grasped the stakes. This wasn't just about retrieving papers. It was about protecting something valuable, something worth fighting for. As the sedan pulled up outside a modest suburban home, Marcus felt a mix of excitement and apprehension bubbling inside him. He had never imagined that his ordinary day would lead him here, to the doorstep of danger and opportunity. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. He wouldn't back down without a fight. The suburban neighborhood was eerily quiet under the steady drizzle of rain. Marcus stood beside Daniel and Lisa, staring at the modest two-story house where Eric Dawson supposedly lived. It looked like any other home on the block, neatly trimmed, bushes, a small porch light flickering faintly. But something about it felt off. Maybe it was the way no lights were on inside despite the late hour, or maybe it was just the weight of what they were about to do. Either way, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that this mission wasn't going to be easy. So, what's the plan? Marcus asked quietly, glancing between Daniel and Lisa. Daniel crossed his arms, his sharp eyes scanning the property. We need those documents back, whatever it takes. Lisa shifted uncomfortably, clutching her folder tighter against her chest. But we can't just barge in there. What if he's armed? Or worse, what if he's already sold the files to someone else? Marcus frowned, thinking hard. He didn't know much about corporate espionage or stolen technology, but he did know people and places. This house might look harmless, but appearances could be deceiving. Before anyone could say anything more, Marcus stepped forward, motioning for them to stay put. Let me check it out first, he said firmly. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Marcus nodded. Yeah. I've been in situations like this before. Trust me, I'll be careful. Without waiting for further argument, Marcus moved closer to the house, keeping low and sticking to the shadows. The rain muffled his footsteps as he crept along the side of the building, listening intently for any signs of movement. When he reached a window, he paused, pressing himself flat against the wall. Slowly, he leaned forward just enough to peek inside. The room beyond the glass was dark, barely illuminated by the glow of a street lamp outside. From what Marcus could see, it looked like a living room, a couch, a coffee table, and some scattered magazines. Nothing seemed out of place, but the stillness made him uneasy. No TV noise, no hum of appliances, not even the faint sound of breathing. Whoever lived here clearly wasn't home, or at least they weren't making their presence known. He returned to Daniel and Lisa, who were waiting anxiously by the car. It's empty, Marcus reported. At least it looks that way, but I think we should wait. If he comes back, we'll have a better chance of catching him off guard. Daniel hesitated, clearly torn between acting quickly and playing it safe. Finally, he nodded. All right, we'll wait. But if he doesn't show up soon, we'll go in anyway. For the next hour, the three of them stayed hidden in the sedan, watching the house through the foggy windshield. The rain continued to fall, creating a soft patter on the roof of the car. Tension hung thick in the air, broken only by occasional whispers as Lisa updated Daniel on the importance of the missing documents. Marcus tuned most of it out, focusing instead on the task at hand. He kept one eye on the house and another on the surrounding area, alert for any sign of activity. His instincts told him that patience would pay off, and sure enough, just after midnight, headlights appeared in the distance. "There." Marcus whispered sharply, pointing toward the approaching vehicle. A beat-up pickup truck turned onto the street and slowly rolled to a stop in front of the house. A figure climbed out, swaying slightly as he walked toward the door. Even from a distance, Marcus could tell the man was drunk. "That's him," Lisa whispered, recognizing Eric immediately. "Eric Dawson." Daniel gripped the steering wheel tightly, his knuckles turning white. "Now's our chance, let's move." They exited the car quietly, staying close to each other as they approached the house. Marcus took the lead, positioning himself near the porch while Daniel and Lisa hung back. As Eric fumbled with his keys, muttering curses under his breath, Marcus stepped into view. "Hey," Marcus called out calmly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. Eric froze, squinting through the rain. "Who the hell are you?" "My name's Marcus," he replied evenly. "I'm here to talk to you about some documents you took from Carter Tech." Eric's bloodshot eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed suspiciously. "What the hell does Carter want now? Tell him to screw off." "It's not just about him," Marcus said, taking a cautious step forward. "These files are important, not just for the company, but for a lot of people. You don't want to mess with something like this, trust me." Eric snorted, stumbling backward toward the door. "Yeah, right. Like I'm gonna believe some random guy showing up in the middle of the night." Before Eric could retreat inside, Daniel stepped forward, his commanding presence impossible to ignore. "Eric, listen to him. This isn't a game anymore. Hand over the documents and we'll leave you alone. Otherwise..." "Otherwise what?" Eric snapped, his voice rising. "You'll call the cops? Go ahead. See if I care." Marcus exchanged a quick glance with Daniel, silently communicating that things were about to escalate. Without hesitation, Marcus lunged forward, grabbing Eric's arm before he could reach for the doorknob. Caught off guard, Eric stumbled, dropping his keys in the process. "Get off me!" Eric shouted, struggling to break free. But Marcus was stronger and smarter. Using Eric's drunken state to his advantage, he twisted the man's arm gently, but firmly, forcing him to comply. Meanwhile, Lisa hurried past them and slipped inside the house, searching for the stolen documents. Minutes later, she reappeared, holding a locked briefcase triumphantly. "Got it." Relieved, Marcus released Eric, who staggered backward, glaring at all of them. "You won't get away with this," he spat bitterly. "We already have," Daniel replied coldly. "Stay out of trouble, Eric. Next time it won't end so peacefully." With the briefcase secured, the trio quickly retreated to the car. As they drove away, Marcus let out a long breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "Nice work back there," Daniel said, glancing at Marcus in the rearview mirror. "Thanks," Marcus replied, though his mind was still racing. Something about the encounter didn't sit right with him. When they finally arrived back at Daniel's penthouse office, Lisa wasted no time opening the briefcase. Inside were stacks of papers filled with technical diagrams and notes, everything they had come for. Daniel flipped through them briefly, nodding in satisfaction. But as Marcus leaned in to take a closer look, something caught his eye. Beneath Eric's desk earlier, he had noticed a small USB drive taped to the underside. On impulse, he had grabbed it without telling anyone. Now, standing in the safety of Daniel's office, Marcus pulled the USB drive from his pocket and held it up. "What's this?" he asked, handing it to Daniel. Daniel examined it curiously, then plugged it into his laptop. As the files loaded, his expression grew darker with each passing second. This changes everything," he muttered, scrolling through page after page of incriminating evidence. "What is it?" Marcus asked, leaning closer. Daniel looked up, his face grim. Corporate espionage. Someone on my team has been working with Eric to sell our technology to a rival company. Lisa gasped, covering her mouth with her hand. Who? Daniel hesitated, then pointed to a name on the screen. Rachel Moore, one of his most trusted executives. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He had helped retrieve the documents, but now it seemed like the real danger was only beginning. The revelation hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Rachel Moore, one of Daniel's closest advisors, was behind the theft. She had been working with Eric Dawson all along, plotting to sell Carter Tech's groundbreaking AI technology to a rival company. It was hard to wrap his head around it. How could someone so trusted betray Daniel like that? Daniel paced back and forth in his penthouse office, his face etched with anger and disbelief. Lisa sat quietly on the couch, her hands clasped tightly together as she processed the information. Meanwhile, Marcus stood near the window, staring out at the city skyline. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, but he barely noticed. His mind was racing. What do we do now? Lisa asked finally, breaking the silence. Daniel stopped pacing and turned to face her. We confront her, but first we need proof. Solid, undeniable evidence that ties Rachel directly to this scheme. Marcus glanced over at the laptop still sitting on the desk. The USB drive had provided enough clues to expose Rachel's involvement, but they needed more if they wanted to take her down without any loopholes. I can help, Marcus said suddenly, stepping forward. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You? How? Marcus hesitated for a moment, then explained. I've dealt with situations like this before. Not exactly the same, but close enough. If we dig deeper into those files, I bet we'll find emails, messages, or even bank records linking Rachel to the rival company. And if not, maybe I can track down other leads. People leave trails when they think no one's watching. Daniel studied Marcus carefully, considering his offer. Finally, he nodded. All right, let's do it your way, for now. But time is critical. We need to act fast before Rachel realizes what's happening. With that, the three of them got to work. Lisa focused on organizing the documents already on the USB drive, searching for anything that could serve as direct evidence. Daniel made calls to trusted allies within the company, discreetly gathering additional intel about Rachel's recent activities. Meanwhile, Marcus took charge of digging deeper into the digital footprint left behind by Rachel and Eric. Using Daniel's laptop, Marcus sifted through the files looking for patterns or connections. At first glance, the data seemed overwhelming. Rows of numbers, technical jargon, and encrypted codes. But Marcus had always been good at solving puzzles. Growing up in Chicago, he'd learned how to read between the lines, whether it was deciphering street signs or figuring out who to trust. This was no different. Hours passed, and the tension in the room grew thicker with each passing minute. Just when Marcus started to feel discouraged, he stumbled upon something promising, a series of encrypted email exchanges between Rachel and someone using the alias Gray Fox. Guys, look at this, Marcus said, turning the laptop toward Daniel and Lisa. Daniel leaned in, scanning the text. This has to be the rival company's contact. They're discussing payment terms and deadlines. Lisa frowned. But it's encrypted. Can we unscramble it? Marcus smirked confidently. Leave that to me. He pulled up another program on the laptop, one designed to decode simple encryption algorithms. Within minutes, the scrambled text transformed into readable sentences. The emails confirmed everything. They detailed Rachel's plan to leak the stolen AI technology in exchange for millions of dollars. That's it, Daniel said, his voice low but firm. We have her. Now came the hard part, deciding what to do next. Daniel suggested calling the authorities immediately, but Marcus cautioned against rushing into it. If we go public too soon, Rachel might destroy evidence or disappear entirely, Marcus warned. We need to catch her red-handed. Daniel agreed, impressed by Marcus's strategic thinking. Together they devised a plan. Lisa would monitor Rachel's movements within the company, keeping tabs on her every step. Meanwhile, Marcus and Daniel would set a trap, using the decrypted emails to lure Rachel into revealing her true intentions. The next morning, Daniel called an emergency meeting with his top executives, including Rachel. As everyone gathered in the conference room, Marcus watched silently from the sidelines, observing Rachel's behavior. She looked calm and composed, her usual self-assured demeanor intact. But there was a flicker of unease in her eyes, a subtle sign that she knew something was wrong. During the meeting, Daniel announced that Carter Tech had discovered a security breach involving sensitive AI technology. He assured everyone that the issue was being handled internally, but hinted that legal action might follow if necessary. Rachel shifted uncomfortably in her seat, though she managed to maintain her composure. When the meeting ended, she lingered, behind, approaching Daniel cautiously. "Is everything okay, Daniel?" she asked, feigning concern. "You seem stressed." Daniel forced a smile. "Just dealing with some unexpected challenges, nothing to worry about." Rachel nodded, but Marcus could see the wheels turning in her head. She suspected something, but what? Over the next few days, Marcus worked closely with Daniel, helping him piece together the final stages of their plan. They decided to stage a fake transfer of funds to the rival company, making it appear as though Rachel's deal was going through. If she took the bait, it would confirm her guilt beyond any doubt. To everyone's surprise, Rachel fell for it. Believing the transaction was real, she sent a message to Gray Fox confirming receipt of the money. Unbeknownst to her, the message was intercepted by Marcus, who had hacked into the communication channel. With this new evidence in hand, Daniel finally called the authorities. When the police arrived at Carter Tech's headquarters, Rachel was arrested without resistance. As officers led her away in handcuffs, she shot Daniel a venomous glare. "You'll regret this," she spat bitterly. Daniel simply shook his head. "No, Rachel. You brought this on yourself." After the chaos subsided, Daniel turned to Marcus, gratitude shining in his eyes. "You saved my company," he said sincerely. "I don't know how to thank you." Marcus shrugged modestly. "I just did what anyone else would have done." But Daniel wasn't satisfied with letting things end there. Over the following weeks, he insisted on mentoring Marcus, teaching him the ins and outs of running a business. For Marcus, it was an opportunity he never dreamed possible, a chance to step out of the shadows and build a future worth fighting for. As he settled into his new role, Marcus couldn't help but reflect on how far he'd come. What started as a simple delivery job had turned into a life-changing adventure, and deep down he knew this was only the beginning. Marcus had never imagined himself sitting in a boardroom, let alone presenting ideas to some of the smartest minds in the tech industry. Yet here he was, dressed in a tailored suit that Daniel had insisted on buying for him, standing at the head of the table as everyone listened closely to what he had to say. It felt surreal, like stepping into a completely different world, one where his voice mattered and his thoughts could shape the future. Over the past few weeks, Daniel had taken Marcus under his wing, teaching him everything from leadership skills to financial planning. At first, Marcus struggled to keep up with the complex jargon and fast-paced discussions, but Daniel was patient. He encouraged Marcus to ask questions, challenge assumptions, and think outside the box. Slowly but surely, Marcus began to find his footing. Today's meeting was a test of sorts. Daniel had invited Marcus to pitch an idea he'd been working on, a community-focused app designed to connect underserved neighborhoods with local resources, job opportunities, and mentorship programs. Marcus believed strongly in the concept, not just because it aligned with Daniel's vision of using technology for social good, but because it reminded him of his own struggles growing up in Chicago. "All right, team," Daniel said, opening the meeting with his usual confidence. "We have something special today. Marcus has been working on a project that I think will resonate with all of you. Let's hear what he has to say." Marcus took a deep breath, then stepped forward. For a moment, he felt the weight of everyone's eyes on him, but he quickly pushed past the nerves. This was his chance to prove himself, not just to Daniel, but to the entire company. The app is called Bridge, Marcus began, pulling up a slide presentation on the screen behind him. It's designed to do exactly what its name suggests, build connections between people who need help and the resources they can use to improve their lives. He clicked to the next slide, showing mock-ups of the app's interface. The design was clean and user-friendly, with features like job listings, educational workshops, and even a section for crowdfunding community projects. In underserved areas, access to information is often limited, Marcus continued. People don't know where to go for help or how to get started. Bridge changes that by putting everything in one place, an easy-to-use platform that anyone can access with just a smartphone. The executives leaned forward, clearly intrigued. One of them raised a hand. How do you plan to fund this? Building an app like this won't be cheap. Marcus smiled, ready for the question. We partner with local businesses, nonprofits, and government agencies. They sponsor certain sections of the app in exchange for visibility and engagement. It's a win-win situation. They reach new audiences, and we provide free services to users. Another executive chimed in. What about sustainability? How do we ensure this doesn't fizzle out after a few months? That's where data comes in, Marcus replied. By tracking user behavior and feedback, we can constantly update and improve the app. Plus, we'll host regular events, job fairs, training sessions, networking meetups, to keep people engaged. When he finished speaking, the room erupted into applause. Even the skeptics couldn't deny the potential of Marcus's idea. Daniel stood up, clapping louder than anyone else. I told you he had talent, Daniel said proudly, turning to the group. This is exactly the kind of innovation we need at Carter Tech. Let's make it happen. With Daniel's full support, the project moved forward quickly. Marcus was appointed as the lead, overseeing every aspect of development, from designing the app to securing partnerships. It wasn't easy balancing so many responsibilities, especially since he was still learning the ropes of corporate life. But Marcus thrived under pressure. One of the biggest challenges came when it was time to hire a team. Marcus wanted to build a diverse group of developers, designers, and marketers who shared his passion for making a difference. However, convincing some of the senior staff to trust his judgment wasn't always smooth sailing. At one point, a veteran engineer named Greg questioned Marcus's qualifications during a hiring review. You've got great ideas, kid, but managing a team, that's a whole different ballgame. Marcus didn't take offense. Instead, he calmly explained his approach. I may not have years of experience, but I understand the problem we're solving better than anyone else in this room. These are my people, the ones who will benefit most from this app. If I can bring their voices into our work, we'll create something truly impactful. Greg hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Fair enough. Let's see what you can do. As the weeks went by, Marcus proved himself more than capable. His team worked tirelessly, fueled by his energy and determination. Together, they turned Bridge from a concept into a reality. When the beta version launched, Marcus spent hours traveling back to his old neighborhood, showing people how to use the app and gathering feedback. Seeing their faces light up as they discovered new job opportunities or signed up for free classes filled him with pride. But success came with its own set of challenges. Some of Daniel's staff grew jealous of Marcus's rapid rise within the company. Rumors spread that he was only getting ahead because of favoritism, not merit. While Marcus tried to ignore the whispers, they weighed heavily on him. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the office, Marcus found himself sitting alone in Daniel's penthouse office. The city lights twinkled below, but Marcus felt anything but peaceful. You okay? Daniel asked, walking in with 2 cups of coffee. Marcus sighed, accepting the cup gratefully. Just thinking about all the negativity. People don't believe I earned this. Daniel sat down across from him, his expression serious. Let me tell you something, Marcus. In this world, there will always be doubters. But the key is not to let them define you. Focus on your work, stay true to your values, and eventually they'll have no choice but to respect you. Those words stuck with Marcus long after their conversation ended. From that day on, He resolved to ignore the critics and focus on what really mattered: making a difference. When Bridge officially launched, it received widespread acclaim. News outlets praised Carter Tech for its commitment to social impact, and users flooded social media with stories of how the app had changed their lives. Marcus became a symbol of hope and resilience, often invited to speak at conferences and community events. Through it all, Marcus remained humble, remembering where he came from. He knew his journey wasn't over. It was just beginning. And as he looked out over the city skyline from Daniel's office once again, he realized that helping retrieve those documents months ago had transformed not only his life, but countless others as well. Just when things seemed to be going perfectly, trouble struck out of nowhere. One morning, Marcus arrived at Carter Tech's headquarters to find an unusual buzz in the air. People whispered behind his back, avoiding eye contact as he walked through the halls. Confused, he made his way to his desk and opened his laptop. What he saw there stopped him cold. Headlines filled the screen, each one more damning than the last. Marcus Johnson, fraud or genius, read one article. Another claimed, Carter Tech's rising star accused of stealing revolutionary AI technology. Anonymous sources accused Marcus of orchestrating the theft himself, painting him as a manipulative opportunist who had tricked Daniel Carter into giving him power. Marcus felt like the floor had been ripped out from under him. He scrolled through the articles, searching for some shred of truth, but every word cut deeper than the last. How could this happen? He had worked so hard to prove himself, to show everyone that he deserved his place at Carter Tech. And now, all of that was being torn away by lies. Before he could process what was happening, Lisa rushed into the room, her face pale with worry. Marcus, have you seen these? She asked, gesturing toward the laptop. I just found them, Marcus replied, his voice hollow. What's going on, Lisa? Who's behind this? She hesitated, then sighed heavily. It's Rachel. She leaked false information to discredit you after her arrest. She's trying to ruin your reputation, and maybe even take down the company again. Marcus clenched his fists, anger bubbling inside him. After everything they had done to expose Rachel's betrayal, she was still fighting back. But why target him specifically? As if reading his thoughts, Lisa continued. She knows how much you mean to Daniel. If she can destroy you, she thinks she can weaken him too. Before Marcus could respond, Daniel entered the room, his expression grim. We need to talk, he said simply, pulling up a chair beside Marcus. For the next hour, the three of them discussed the situation. Daniel assured Marcus that he believed in him completely, but the damage was already done. Public opinion had turned against Marcus, and even some of Daniel's own team were starting to doubt his integrity. I want to quit, Marcus muttered finally, slumping back in his chair. If people don't trust me, I can't do my job properly. Maybe it's better if I just walk away. No, Daniel said firmly, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. You're not quitting. This is exactly what Rachel wants. To break you. We're not giving her that satisfaction. But how do we fight this? Marcus asked, his frustration evident. These articles are everywhere. Everyone thinks I'm guilty. We gather evidence, Daniel replied, his tone resolute. Rachel may have planted these stories, but she left traces. We'll hire a PR firm to manage the fallout, and in the meantime, we'll dig up proof of her involvement in the smear campaign. Over the next few days, Marcus threw himself into uncovering the truth. With Lisa's help, he combed through emails, social media posts, and news archives, piecing together Rachel's scheme. It wasn't easy. She had covered her tracks carefully, but eventually they found what they needed. Screenshots of private messages between Rachel and anonymous journalists, detailing plans to spread false rumors about Marcus. Armed with this evidence, Daniel called a press conference to address the accusations head-on. Reporters packed the auditorium, eager to hear Carter Tech's response to the scandal. When Daniel stepped onto the stage, followed closely by Marcus, the room fell silent. Thank you all for coming today, Daniel began, his voice steady and commanding. Recent reports have accused my colleague Marcus Johnson of stealing proprietary technology from Carter Trust. I'm here to tell you that those claims are false. He went on to explain the real story, how Marcus had helped recover stolen documents, exposed corporate espionage, and led the development of Bridge, the app transforming underserved communities. Then Daniel presented the evidence proving Rachel's role in the smear campaign, leaving no room for doubt. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, he stepped forward, his heart pounding. For a moment, he scanned the crowd, seeing both skepticism and curiosity in their eyes. Taking a deep breath, he began. "I know what it looks like," he said, his voice calm but heartfelt. "A guy like me doesn't usually end up in a place like Carter Tech. But life isn't always fair, and neither are opportunities. All I ever wanted was a chance to prove myself. That's all I've been doing since the day I walked into this company. These accusations hurt, not because they're true, but because they undermine everything I've worked for. But I'm not backing down. I won't let fear or lies stop me from making a difference." The audience erupted into applause, and for the first time in days, Marcus felt a glimmer of hope. By the end of the press conference, public sentiment had shifted dramatically. Journalists praised Daniel and Marcus for their transparency, and Rachel's credibility crumbled further. In the weeks that followed, Marcus focused on rebuilding trust within the company. He held meetings with skeptical staff members, answering their questions honestly and inviting them to collaborate on new projects. Slowly but surely, he earned their respect, not through grand gestures but through consistent effort and genuine care for the work they were doing. Through it all, Daniel remained a steadfast ally, reminding Marcus that setbacks were part of any journey worth taking. "Every great leader faces challenges," Daniel told him one evening. "What defines them isn't how many times they fall, it's how many times they get back up." By the time the dust settled, Marcus realized something important. Adversity had strengthened him. He wasn't the same person who had nervously delivered packages months ago. He was wiser, tougher, and more determined than ever to succeed. Not just for himself, but for everyone counting on him. And as he stood on the rooftop terrace of Carter Tech's headquarters, watching the city lights flicker below, Marcus knew one thing for certain. No matter what came next, he would face it head-on. Months after the scandal had died down, Marcus found himself standing on a stage he never thought he'd occupy. It was a modest community center in his old neighborhood, but to him, it felt like home. The room was packed with young faces. Kids, fresh out of high school, college students unsure of their next steps, and even a few older adults looking for a second chance. They were all there because they wanted something better for themselves, just like Marcus once had. He adjusted the microphone and smiled warmly at the crowd. "When I was growing up around here," he began, his voice steady and clear, "I didn't see a lot of opportunities. All I knew was that I wanted more, not just for myself, but for the people I cared about. That's why I created Bridge." The audience listened intently as Marcus shared his story, the struggles, the victories, and everything in between. He told them about delivering packages in the rain, helping Daniel Carter retrieve stolen documents, and how those small choices led to bigger ones. He spoke candidly about the challenges he faced along the way, the doubters, the scandals, the moments when giving up seemed easier than pushing forward. "But here's the thing," Marcus said, leaning closer to the mic. "Every challenge taught me something valuable. Every failure made me stronger. And every success reminded me that hard work pays off, if you're willing to put in the effort." By the time he finished speaking, the room erupted into applause. People lined up afterward to ask questions, share their own dreams, and thank him for inspiring them. Marcus stayed late into the evening, shaking hands, signing autographs, and offering advice wherever he could. As he walked back to his car that night, he couldn't help but reflect on how far he'd come. Helping Daniel retrieve those documents hadn't just changed his career, it had transformed his entire perspective on life. He realized now that success wasn't about wealth or fame, it was about impact. If he could inspire just one person in that room to chase their dreams, then everything he'd been through would be worth it. Back at Carter Tech, Marcus continued to thrive. Daniel promoted him to Vice President of Social Impact Initiatives, giving him a platform to create lasting change. Under his leadership, Bridge expanded to cities across the country, connecting thousands of underserved individuals with resources and opportunities. The app became a beacon of hope, proving that technology could be used for good when guided by compassion and purpose. Marcus also took on a mentorship role within the company, working closely with young employees who reminded him of his younger self. He encouraged them to think boldly, take risks, and never let fear hold them back. Many of these mentees went on to launch their own projects, inspired by Marcus's example. One day, while reviewing proposals for new initiatives, Marcus came across an idea submitted by a junior developer named Jamal. It was a program designed to teach coding skills to teenagers in low-income neighborhoods. Marcus immediately saw the potential and greenlit the project, assigning Jamal to lead it. Watching Jamal grow into his role reminded Marcus of his early days at Carter Tech, how Daniel had believed in him when no one else did. Now, he was paying it forward, creating a cycle of empowerment that would ripple outward for generations. Outside of work, Marcus remained deeply connected to his roots. He bought a small apartment near his old neighborhood, close enough to visit his younger sister regularly. Together, they often volunteered at local shelters, handing out food and clothes to families in need. On weekends, Marcus hosted workshops for kids, teaching them basic tech skills and encouraging them to dream big. Years passed, and Marcus's legacy only grew stronger. Bridge earned international recognition, winning awards for its innovative approach to social change. Marcus himself became a household name, celebrated not just for his achievements, but for his humility and dedication to helping others. One sunny afternoon, Marcus returned to the same rooftop terrace where he had once reflected on his journey. This time, however, he wasn't alone. A group of young entrepreneurs, some from Carter Tech, others from the community, had joined him to brainstorm ideas for future projects. As they discussed possibilities, Marcus gazed out over the city skyline. He thought about the twists and turns that had brought him here. The rainy day he bumped into Lisa Monroe, the tense hours spent retrieving stolen documents, the betrayal by Rachel Moore, and the countless obstacles he'd overcome since then. Life has a funny way of working out, he said aloud, half to himself and half to the group. One of the young entrepreneurs, a bright-eyed woman named Tanya, looked up at him curiously. "What do you mean?" Marcus chuckled softly. "I mean, sometimes the smallest decisions lead to the biggest changes, like picking up those papers on a rainy street corner. At the time, I didn't think much of it. But looking back, that moment changed everything for me and maybe for a lot of other people too." Tanya nodded thoughtfully. "So what's your advice for someone just starting out?" Marcus paused, considering the question carefully. Then he smiled. "My advice is simple. Show up, be present, take chances, even when you're scared. And most importantly, remember why you started. Because if your why is strong enough, you'll find a way to make it happen." The group fell silent, absorbing his words. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Marcus felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had come a long way from the streets of Chicago, but he hadn't forgotten where he came from, or the people who helped him along the way. And as he looked out over the city lights, Marcus knew one thing for certain. This wasn't the end of his story. It was just the beginning of something even greater.